This is Super Black. I am your host, Carl Waldron, and today we tackle the web slinger himself, Brooklyn's own Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure to head over to super.black for more episodes of the podcast, as well as great Black fandom content. Let's dive into it. Miles Morales of Earth 1610 was bitten by a genetically enhanced spider, which gave him amazing powers. But for his need to be a normal kid, he hid those powers from the world. Tragically, he loses someone incredibly close to him, a mentor even. And in that loss, he learns that with great power comes great responsibility. He dons the mantle of Spider-Man and vows to protect the innocent from the evils of the world. Does that sound pretty familiar? Miles Morales is gifted with all of the abilities of Spider-Man, as well as some unique powers of his own, which make him his own version of the hero. Miles Morales is gifted with all of the abilities of Spider-Man, including his spidey sense, strength, speed, ability to cling to walls, you name it, he's got the spider stuff. But he also has a set of powers unique to him, including the Venom Blasts and Camouflage. Now, the Venom Blasts are interesting because they are bioelectrical stunning charges that he can use to incapacitate or even kill his enemies. Very much electrical powers on a Spider-Man, which is, pretty cool. It does fall in line with the trope of black superheroes with electrical powers, but I won't go down that road in this episode. Miles dons an all-black with red highlights Spider-Man costume, not to be confused with the Venom costume, which is all black with the white gigantic spider. Miles Morales does also have a very cool version of his costume in the movie Into the Spider-Verse, which, if you haven't seen it, please go watch it. It is a triumph of an animated film, and it tells the origin story of Miles Morales in a very fun, dramatic, tragic, and fantastical way. It does also introduce a variety of other spider people from the multiverse, but it centers around the life of Miles Morales, how it is disrupted by this genetically enhanced spider, and his relationship with his family and his uncle, and it's just an amazing film. Super Black actually did an episode reviewing Into the Spider-Verse with my co-host Dan. Please go back and listen to that one when we're done with here, and just hear how much we loved the movie. But in the movie, Miles Morales' costume is a hood, and he spray paints the spider on his outfit, and it's an amazing homage to kind of hip hop culture. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention once again that Miles Morales is from Brooklyn, like myself. Always good to see a Brooklyn Knight get some powers and do some good in the neighborhood. Since his debut in 2011, the character of Miles Morales' Spider-Man has made his way through a variety of comics and a bunch of media in Marvel to become a very well-known version of Spider-Man. He's even been reintroduced into Earth 616 as a version of Spider-Man after the multiverse collapses, making him canonically just Spider-Man, not just another multiversal Spider-Man, but Spider-Man himself. Now, if you are interested in learning a lot more about Miles Morales, again, go check out Into the Spider-Verse, an amazing film, but also there is an amazing game on PlayStation 4 and 5 called Marvel's Spider-Man: Miles Morales. In that game, first let's talk a little bit about the Spider-Man game, the base game itself for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. It is quite possibly the greatest superhero video game on any platform. It lovingly recreates New York City and puts you in the slippers of Spider-Man, Peter Parker, as he, deals with his rogue gallery and a bunch of, nonsense, but it's an amazing, I use that word a lot because it is a Spider-Man word. It is an amazing story and a retelling of how Spider-Man, one of his foes, let's say, his foe's origin story. It also gives you, in the first game, a glimpse of Miles Morales. Peter Parker does run across Miles Morales in the game, and they tease them teaming up, right? So when the game first came out, everyone was like, yo, why doesn't Peter Parker have a Miles Morales costume? That was one of my thoughts. I was like, it would have been so easy to just put the costume in here and we could have played, put the costume on and imagined ourselves as Miles Morales. Now, I was reacting to the fact that in my mind, there is the Mortal Kombat 11 where some of the black superhero characters are just costumes for their white counterparts. And in my mind, I was like, the best we're going to do is get, the Miles Morales costume to put on Peter. Boy, was I wrong. We got a whole other game, a short game, but a whole other game in the same engine where you get to play as Miles Morales. I couldn't find a PS5 fast enough to buy that game. Now, the game is based on an already amazing game, the Spider-Man base, but now you get to play as Miles Morales, swinging around the city as a fledgling Spider-Man with his brand new powers, all new quips and quotes, and his own life to maneuver. It's an amazing story. Again, there goes that word. It's a fantastic story. There we go. Let's switch it up a little bit. It's a fantastic story and a great little subsection of that Spider-Man universe where you play as a completely different Spider-Man. And what makes it unique is what I mentioned before. Miles Morales has his own set of superhero powers, being, the electrical venom charge and his camouflage. And you get to incorporate that into the moveset of the video game. Something you couldn't do as Peter Parker. So in retrospect, I'm very happy I didn't get the Miles Morales costume in Peter Parker. And I imagine that Sony knew they were going to do that kind of not spin-off, but DLC. So they kept that costume out as, it was an obvious Easter egg. Because again, the Spider-Man game is chock full of the most obscure Spider-Man outfits. There was I think it was the Fantastic Four Bagman outfit where he had a bag on his head to conceal his identity. There was like a ghost spider. There's a cel-shaded version of the Spider-Man, my favorite, as well as like Scarlet Spider, Metal Spider. Like there were so many costumes, and the fact that there wasn't a Miles Morales one, I should have taken as a hint that they were going to do some sort of DLC where you play as Miles. But me, I was being cynical, having been burned before. But I was pleasantly surprised. You could probably see, if you're watching this on YouTube, the gameplay in the background. It is a fantastic game. I almost said the amazing word. Yep, said it. And if you are able to secure yourself a PS5, or even I believe it's on PS4, you should play the game. It's not a long journey, but it is a fun one. And if you haven't played the original Spider-Man game, please go play that. I mean, there's no better superhero game than that. I would argue that until the sun goes down, that there's no better game that makes you feel like a superhero than Marvel's Spider-Man on PS4. I think a close second would be the Arkham Knight game. No, not Arkham Knight. The Arkham City game, the Batman game by Rocksteady, but it's a toss-up. I'll in that coin flip, I'm taking Spider-Man all day because it's not just like a contrived. I'm putting a caveat on here. Arkham City is a fantastic game, but it is a contrived story to keep you isolated in the city limits. It only happens at night. It's a very tailored experience. But Spider-Man, it has a day-night cycle. You can literally be Spider-Man. You swing through the streets. You can stop crimes that are happening. You get calls from the cops that tell you when things are going down. You can stop burglaries and car chases. It's the thing. And in the Miles Morales version, you actually get a pet. You get a pet cat that you can keep in your backpack, which was a huge deal at the time of its release. So again, if you're interested in learning a ton about Miles Morales, there's countless comics and game. There's that game. I was going to say games. There's that game and the Into the Spider-Verse, which is the, I think, quintessential entry point for any fan or non-fan to learn more about Miles Morales. Now, Miles, like I said, has been all over the Marvel Universe at this point. He's joined a number of different teams. He's been in the Avengers, the Young Avengers. He's been in the Champions, which is just basically the youngest of Avengers, I think. And he's done his own Sinister Six. He's had, he's tackled his own version of Norman Osborn and kind of Doc Ock and all these classic Peter Parker villains in his own world, as well as the 616 world. Some of the more recent interesting runs of the Miles Morales story were a couple of comics that came out early 2022 called What If Miles Morales? And they chronicled a bunch of different scenarios where Miles Morales became a different Marvel superhero. So what if Miles became Thor or the Hulk or Wolverine or Captain America? And the one that caught the most attention for the worst possible reason was what if Miles Morales became Thor? Now, this Thor what if comic came under fire because the writing and sort of visual representation of Miles Morales was seen as offensive or, reductive, having him kind of have graffiti on Mjolnir and saying stuff like hammer time, and it was just the way he carried himself within the comic and the language that was used in his dialogue led people to believe he was more of a hood superhero, for lack of a better term. It's the worst term, really, but just a leaning into kind of like the 80s sort of depiction of New York City, graffiti everywhere, kind of hip hop and at its, peak, not peak, but definitely where it was more pronounced, I would say. Boom boxes and slang and whatnot. I won't dig too deep into the controversy. That's for other outlets and other people to kind of dive into the negativity. If you want to look at the positives, Miles Morales as a character has sort of transcended the confines of being quote-unquote second Spider-Man. And people do embrace the character of Miles as a valid part of the Marvel Universe. So much so that they explore him as characters outside of Spider-Man. Now, because of Miles Morales' sort of popularity in the zeitgeist of Marvel superheroes, perhaps it's time we here at Super Black took a stab at a what if and designed our own version of Miles Morales. Now, the hard part about this is that I would rather him be his own hero and not adopt the legacy of Spider-Man or any of the other Marvel superheroes that are around today. So the hard part is like, what does he remain bitten by a radioactive blank? It's a hard question because he lives in Brooklyn. And I can attest that nothing in Brooklyn is something you want to be bitten by or associated with. There's no insect or animal that is, I would say, superhero worthy that resides in Brooklyn. There's nothing but rats, pigeons. I don't remember seeing a ton of spiders in Brooklyn. Roaches, ain't nobody want to be a roach. That's just disrespectful. Even though roaches are resilient little buggers, but not the most glamorous of superheroes. I believe the Tick had a roach-based superhero for that same reason, but also it was awkward. I can't remember exactly. But let's back to Miles. What could he be bitten with or stricken with? Maybe he's not bitten by anything. The genetically enhanced spider that does bite him is infused with the Oz serum, which is like the Norman Osborn kind of Green Goblin-esque serum. So perhaps he gets dosed with that. What if he got dosed with that and became a version of the Green Goblin that was good? Or evil, hell, it doesn't matter. I think perhaps the Oz serum changes his physiology, so he gets the super strength, he gets the resilience of the Green Goblin, but maybe it has some adverse effect on him, and maybe we can take one of his powers that he already has and transform it a little bit. So he has the Venom Blast and Camouflage, so let's keep the Camouflage. He gets the Camouflage. But Venom Blast, I don't know. That I'd love for him to move outside of the electric-based superheroes into something a little more him, a little more unique, maybe. My first thought was to kind of put him on par with someone like Cyclops, where he has sort of eye beams that come out. So instead of concussive blasts like Cyclops, maybe he has like a venom shot from his eyes. But if it's not electrical and not concussive, that's the hard split, right? The Venom Blasts are bioelectric, so it has a reason to exist. It's basically the Oz serum amplifies his own electrical field in his body, and he uses it as a projectile or a stunning factor. But if he were to turn it into a laser of some sort, instead of like having that shock blast, maybe he has sort of a light-based power. Like he uses that same bioelectrical field to kind of manipulate light around him. I mean, it's a superhero. It doesn't have to make complete sense, but I'm thinking of him as like a flashbang, where he has strength, he has camouflage, and then he also has like this surprise attack where he can just like instantly pop the lights around him, or he just like a flashbang, he explodes in a flurry of light and concussive force with that Venom Blast, and he becomes he's durable, he's strong, he's able to subdue mass amounts of enemies, but also, and here's the tricky part, it can also harm his fellow heroes. So he has to balance using that ability and try to control it so that it's not so massive. So he can, let's say, stun with like this crazy flashbang type move one person in front of him, where he kind of looks at them and then just bow, like his eyes like flash and it just kind of concusses them. Or he could detonate like a giant human flashbang and knock out like a city block or some crap like that. I think that sounds pretty cool. And then, of course, yes, he has to, weigh the pros and cons of, will he knock out the Spider-Man with him? Will he knock out, Captain America or whatever? And he has to kind of, and which would lead to really cool scenes where they're getting kind of pummeled by some villain, and they go, Miles, you gotta do it. And he goes, but then everyone will be knocked out, and it'll just be me, and I'm like a 13-year-old kid, and he's like, just do it. And then it's just a panel of him going, yeah, just screaming, and just flash of white light, boom, and then the next panel is just like smoke, and everyone's just on the floor, completely knocked out, and it's just Miles standing there, and then one of the villains gets up, and then he has to contend, like this 13-year-old boy has to fight this villain while all the other heroes are kind of impacted as well as the other villains. I think that would be a great, maybe a great one-off What If comic, right? So we have his kind of abilities, we have his move set, because again, there's no spider involved, and we're kind of tweaking the Venom Blast, not be specifically electrical based, but definitely have roots in the electrical field where he becomes a walking flashbang. So then what is his name? Boy, these are always the hardest part. Flashbang would not be a great name. Bang would be even worse name, but Bang would be, I say it out loud, it made me giggle like a little boy. Can't do Flash because Flash is a superhero. I'm sure there is a Bang superhero, but Capacity? Would Capacity work? I was thinking Incapacitate. Concussion. Boy, this is rough, especially on a podcast. I don't want to sit here thinking too hard on it, but I think something along the lines of Capacity would be incapacitate, incapacity, inability. No, incapacitate. That's too long for a superhero name. I'm just rambling at this point. Cripple? No, that's messed up. Maim? Maim is a pretty... Maim is not the most positive word, but as a superhero name, Maim is short. It's easy to remember. It would make for a dope logo on a comic book. Yeah, let's go with Maim. Let's close that portion of the podcast with, we've created a what if version of Miles Morales where he becomes his own superhero. We've tweaked his powers so that he, of course, he gets doused with the Oscorp branded Oz serum, and with that he gets the resilience and strength that Green Goblin would get, while also it amplifies his bioelectrical field, but instead of becoming, electrical based, it creates like this concussive force that he can expel in various degrees to either knock out someone right in front of him by kind of looking at them and just kind of flashing them like it comes out of his eyes or something. His eyes and mouth. It'll be really creepy if he like screams and then his mouth is open and his eyes are open. It's just white light shooting out and just knocks them out. Or he can generate he can use his whole body to generate that concussive blast, which then can knock out literally anybody within a 1 block radius, which makes him have to think about what he does and how much energy he expels so that he doesn't harm his friends or any people that are by him, because it is a concussive force, so it can cause a heart attack or something. And his name would be Maim, which is again not super positive, but I think, how about Hinder? So he's not maiming someone, he's not removing limbs or crippling them in any way, but to hinder someone is to prevent them or to slow them down. Hinder. Better name. There you go. We got there. His name is Hinder. And he's able to incapacitate enemies and anyone with his concussive bioelectrical blast. Woo! It's good to do a what if / originals / forge / studio. I have so many names for this stuff. What should we call this part of the podcast? We have Forge, which Dan and I came up with. We have originals, which I particularly like. It's very simple. And then there's also studio, which we were playing with that idea to kind of have it be a big part of Super Black, where we just create our own SBU, Super Black Universe. Let me know in the comments or on Twitter. Hit us up. That's going to bring us to the end of today's episode. You guys have no idea how many times I restarted this episode. I've been trying so hard to figure out what to say about Miles Morales other than he's dope and you should read up or play more Miles Morales content. But we made it. We did it. We created our own version of Miles Morales. Maybe I'll send that to Dan and he can draw it up. Thank you all again for listening to this episode of Super Black. Please, again, make sure to head over to super.black for more podcasts and more content. I have been Carl. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Full stop.